Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
The White House is going to lift U.S. travel bans on international visitors, but only for the fully vaccinated. NTD's Kevin Hogan brings us the details and why the White House chose to do this now.
Come November, foreign nationals can fly into the U.S. if they show proof of vaccination before boarding.
In early November, we'll be putting in place strict protocols to prevent the spread of COVID-19 from passengers flying internationally into the United States by requiring that adult foreign nationals traveling to the United States be fully vaccinated. Obviously, this is the conclusion of a policy process on that particular issue, an important one facing many people around the world.
The move opens up travel to non-U.S. citizens from 33 countries, which includes many European nations. The White House COVID coordinator, Jeffrey Zients, says those travelers will have to show proof of a negative COVID test within 3 days of arrival. And they will also have to undergo contact tracing. In July, the White House decided not to lift travel restrictions due to concerns over the Delta variant. But now the administration is putting in place this strict global system, which is consistent for all countries.
Well, back in July, we also announced that there were a series of working groups that were both interagency and working with a range of countries and partners in the world to determine what the most equitable and clear policies should be moving forward to resume broader international travel. And the older rules were not equitable in our view, and they were a bit confusing. And so this was an effort to pursue that.
Unvaccinated Americans coming back to the U.S. will have to test negative 1 day before they leave and test again after they arrive. And as for vaccine requirements on domestic flights, Zients says nothing is off the table. The White House COVID coordinator does not say which vaccines are going to be accepted, but says the CDC will give more details later. And the rules only apply to air travel, while land borders with Canada and Mexico remain closed to non-essential travel. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Now we turn to organ harvesting in China. The Chinese regime is known to have been removing organs from non-consenting, healthy people for decades, then selling them to international patients seeking transplants. But the crime has been largely ignored. Now, at the World Summit on Combating and Preventing Forced Organ Harvesting, politicians and leaders from around the globe are calling for action. NTD's Penny Joe reports.
When I was educated on this issue and what was happening, it took my core and it shook it. Forced organ harvesting is truly a monstrous practice that is difficult to conceive, even exists, until it is brought before you. The idea that there are those that take someone's life and treat them like parts for pay or favors still leaves me horrified.
Dozens of political leaders and experts from 19 countries are gathering virtually to raise awareness of China's continued practice of forced organ harvesting. That's a state-sponsored campaign to kill prisoners of conscience to supply organs for China's transplant market.
Organ donation is a precious act of saving a life. But forced organ harvesting is commercialized murder and without doubt amongst the worst of crimes.
French Senator André Gattolin explained that some politicians have chosen to be silent because of threats from the Chinese regime.
When one questions the forced removal of organs in China, one quickly runs the risk of being labeled heavily anti-communist or anti-Chinese. And sometimes even risk the threat of commercial or political retaliation from Beijing. Hence the appalling diplomacy of silence, which is far from confined to France.
China is one of the top destinations for transplant tourism, meaning people from all over the world go to China to get a transplant. That's because Chinese hospitals offer very short wait times. Beijing claims that their organs come from voluntary donors. But a London-based People's Tribunal in 2019 called the regime out for lying. It concluded that the practice of forced organ harvesting was happening on a significant scale in China, with Falun Gong practitioners being the main source of organs. The spiritual practice has been persecuted by the Chinese regime since 1999. Song Kim, a judge from the Seoul Administrative Court in South Korea, argues that global organizations like the United Nations may not be of much help in this case. That's because the Chinese regime itself is a member of the UN Human Rights Council.
It might take another 20 years for UN to take effective actions against the crime.
She suggested that instead, individual countries use autonomous sanctions under what's called the Global Magnitsky Act. The U.S. has used it to punish Chinese officials responsible for abuses in Xinjiang. That's by freezing their assets and banning perpetrators from entering the United States. Kim says the same approach can be used to target facilitators of forced organ harvesting. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
The migrant crisis continues under the Del Rio Bridge. Authorities are taking steps to clear the encampment, but Republican governors want long-term solutions. They're asking to meet with President Biden to discuss ways to secure the border. And the Texas governor wants Biden to declare a federal emergency. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
Numerous illegal immigrants were seen leaving the de facto migrant camp under the Del Rio International Bridge in Texas Monday. The ones seen here are heading back across the Rio Grande River to Mexico. Some are getting supplies, while others are avoiding deportation. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas traveled to the area Monday. He calls the surge in migrants, the around 16,000 of them under the bridge, rather sudden and dramatic, and he denounces what he calls false information driving the influx.
We have reiterated that our borders are not open, and people should not make the dangerous journey. Individuals and families are subject to border restrictions, including expulsion.
He adds that many of the migrants will be deported. Border Chief Raul Ortiz told Fox News Sunday that only adult men will be expelled, while most family units will be processed and released into the U.S. Mayorkas says the Biden administration hopes to secure 1 to 3 flights per day to return the migrants. And they're also providing additional supplies, water and portable toilets for migrants at the camp. But many governors around the country want long-term solutions to the ongoing border crisis. 26 Republican governors sent a letter to President Biden Monday, requesting a meeting to discuss ways to secure the border. The governors stressed the damage done by months of illegal border crossings. They wrote that Biden's border policy has instigated an international humanitarian crisis, spurred a spike in international criminal activity, and opened the floodgates to human traffickers and drug smugglers, endangering public health and safety in their states. The governors are asking to meet at the White House within the next 15 days. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott is also asking Biden to issue an emergency declaration for his state due to the escalating crisis at the border. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
The World Bank may have inflated China's business ranking. A new report says China was ranked number 78 when it should have been at 85. And now China and Taiwan are arguing over a trade agreement and fruit exports. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
And Taiwan is also casting doubt on Beijing's bid to join the trade bloc. Posting on Twitter, Taiwan's foreign minister says, quote, China wants to join the high-standard CPTPP. Is this a joke? The tweet comes after China announced a ban on Taiwan's waxed apple and sugar apple imports without warning. Beijing says it found pests on these imported fruits. The move could be a blow for Taiwan's agriculture industry. Last year, up to 97% of these fruits' exports went to China. Taiwan says the move is an act of weaponizing trade. Taiwan says Beijing hasn't provided any evidence for its claim of pest concerns. Taiwan is considering filing a complaint to the World Trade Organization over the fruit ban. Beijing's fruit ban isn't entirely a surprise, though. Earlier this year, under heightened tensions between mainland China and Taiwan, Beijing banned Taiwan's pineapple imports, citing harmful creatures that could come with the fruit. Taiwan fired back by saying there's nothing wrong with the pineapples and accused Beijing of playing politics. A former World Bank CEO is alleged to have pressured staff to boost China's ranking. Kristalina Georgieva is now heading the International Monetary Fund. An independent report says when she headed the World Bank, she pressured staff to boost China's ranking in a flagship report. This was at the same time the Washington-based lender saw China's support for a big capital increase. The report was prepared at the request of the bank's ethics committee. It uncovered that the Doing Business 2018 report should have ranked China 85th, but instead ranked it 78th. The report's ranking is based on world business conditions. Georgieva says she disagrees fundamentally with the findings and interpretations of the report. As a result, the World Bank said Thursday it would pull the Doing Business report. The Chinese regime said on Friday it attaches great importance to improving the business environment. China is the third largest shareholder of the World Bank, after the United States and Japan.
And the highest court in the land is set to hear arguments on a highly anticipated abortion case this December. Mississippi will defend its 2018 law, which prohibits abortions after 15 weeks. And the GOP is aiming to regain its strongholds in Georgia by appealing to more voters, in particular Asian and Pacific Americans. The Republican Party is opening a new community center there to do just that. Here are the details.
This Asian Pacific American Community Center, opened by the Republican National Committee, is the second in the country and the first in Georgia. It opened its doors last Friday in the state's second most populous county, Gwinnett County. The location is important.
Two most competitive congressional districts, District 7 and District 6. Between the last 10 years, our Asian population in District 6 has increased by 51%. In District 7 has increased by a whopping 83%.
Both districts had been Republican strongholds for decades, but flipped blue in the last two elections. The GOP also lost both Senate seats in Georgia. Now the party plans to recapture the seats by appealing to the principles that Asian Americans value.
They love America, they love free enterprise, they hate communism, they value work and education.
Exit polls from recent elections show that nationally, Asian Americans vote overwhelmingly for the Democratic Party, usually by 60 to 70%. But the GOP seems confident they can rally Asian Americans on a key issue: their attitudes on socialism and communism.
To Democrats, the government never has quite enough power, and they are pushing the United States towards socialism and communism, the same systems that have literally oppressed billions of people in Asia.
Asian American community leaders speaking at the opening event highlight patriotism and the need to preserve American values.
This country provides us everything we need to stand up.
Yes.
And now we've got a time to pay back, because today is still land of opportunity, this greatest country in the world that I know. However, we're not sure about 100 years later.
The Republican Party plans to open more such centers in other parts of the country. They've already done so in Orange County, California.
In France, police officers who refuse the COVID-19 vaccine are facing pressure from within their system. A French police union says the situation has become unbearable for many. NTD correspondent David Vives has the story.
The French Interior Minister says around 80,000 people protested against the country's health pass and vaccine mandates this weekend. France has made the COVID-19 vaccine mandatory for healthcare workers. It doesn't apply to police officers, but a French police union says they are under pressure to get vaccinated. According to the union spokesman Bruno Attal, the situation is unbearable for many unvaccinated police officers.
Some of my colleagues that are not vaccinated feel a tremendous pressure from their hierarchy. They are being reminded all the time to get the vaccine. Some are being kept out of regular missions, or they can't be trained if they don't take the vaccine. Some are forbidden to take days off. We found that this only happens to the unvaccinated.
Attal says he's not against the vaccine and he chose to take the shots. But he also chooses to protest against vaccine mandates because he's against discriminating people. He says the health pass creates different categories of citizens with different rights, and that is unacceptable and discrimination against the unvaccinated.
As for myself, I am vaccinated, but this is not the problem. The problem is about our liberty.
And the French Bureau of Internal Affairs even summoned him because he spoke openly against the health pass on social media.
They told me I should not retweet messages against the health pass. I don't think I'll be sanctioned, but if I do, I'll appeal. I trust the rule of law.
The health pass is in effect until November 15th, but the government will soon seek to extend it beyond this date. David Vives, NTD News.
Over the weekend, Silicon Valley held its annual antique auto show. Owners display their cars for the public to enjoy. Here's NTD's Eileen Ang with more.
It's the 21st annual Antique Auto Show, one of the largest in the West. Every year, a different vehicle is featured. This year is the Pierce Arrow from 1901 to 1939.
The show is hosted by members of the Santa Clara Valley Model T Ford Club. Every year, owners showcase their pre-World War II vehicles in San Jose's History Park.
It's so much fun, and people love to see them. I mean, anytime somebody is on the sidewalk or another car, they're always waving or taking pictures. So we love to get them out. It's a little piece of history that we're preserving, and we enjoy that part of it.
Greenberg is also the owner of a 1923 Model T Ford.
It's not easy to stop these cars, so and you can't go very fast. I mean, what I tell people when they ask me how fast will this car go, I tell them this car goes so slow you have to clean the bugs off the back window.
The requirement is that the vehicles are from before 1946 and must be period correct, so they can't be hot rods or modified with new equipment.
There's people that build the engines and transmissions and rear ends. All the parts are sourced. There's people that supply all the small parts. You can get a catalog. With Model Ts, nearly everything's available if you want to purchase it online or through a catalog.
Occasionally, movie director Charlie Chaplin can be seen walking around in his iconic outfit to blend in with the setting.
They last for years. The car that I have was my grandfather's car. He bought it in 1923 in Detroit at the Detroit factory, the Dodge factory, for $400. Drove it from Detroit to San Jose here. It is still running today.
Visitors return regularly from near and far.
Our modern cars are going to drive much nicer than these, but these are more fun. You slow down and you tour around in your antique car, you stop, you talk to people. They're good conversation starters too. Give people rides. It's just more fun. It's simple.
It's not just the cars, but it's the setting. There's a print shop museum over there. Amazing. Like this, they printed this right in front of us on an old machine that was made from the 1800s, and they show how to do that and just setting type and how they made that little type thing.
History Park also has an old gas station, blacksmith shed, Chinese American Historical Museum, and hotel. The park is also celebrating its 50th anniversary since it first welcomed people in 1971. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
Cheers and applause echoed around the Eiffel Tower as French slackliner Nathan Paulin walked across a rope suspended over 200 feet above the ground.
The rope was just under 2,000 feet long, and Paulin was attached to a safety line the whole way. The course led from the first floor of the Eiffel Tower towards the Chaillot Theater across the backdrop of the Paris skyline. Paulin called the course beautiful, and at times he paused to sit and lie on the rope. He completed the feat within half an hour as part of a festival organized by the theater. Paulin first walked on a slackline 10 years ago, overcoming his childhood fear of heights. He said it wasn't easy to complete Saturday's feat, which took 4 years of practice. In 2019, he conducted a shorter slackline walk between two skyscrapers in the Paris business district. He said although it wasn't easy, he was happy to be able to share the performance with the public.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to catch all of our programs on TV. NTD Evening News is on every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Find your local NTD channel at ntd.com/TV.